I found the first camera behind the smoke detector in my own kitchen at 6:40 in the morning, 3 days before a hearing that would decide who got to control my father-in-law's $2.3 million estate and whether I'd ever be allowed within 100 feet of him again. I'm Soraya, 34. And before I get into how I found it, you need to understand something. I don't get paranoid about cameras. I install security systems for a living. I'm the person companies hire when they want to know exactly how someone got into their network without anyone noticing. So when I tell you I almost missed it, that should tell you how good the job was. Let me back up, though, because none of this makes sense without the last 4 years. I married into the Kessler family. Nate Kessler, my husband, grew up in a rambling stone house outside Hartford with his dad Walter and his mom Ingrid. Old money Connecticut, the kind of family where the silverware has initials on it. Walter built a mid-size manufacturing company from nothing, sold his majority stake at 68, and spent his retirement puttering around his workshop and calling me the smart one at every single family dinner, which Ingrid never once found charming. Here's the thing about Walter, though. 2 years ago, he started forgetting things. Small stuff at first, where he'd left his glasses, whether he'd already told you a story. Then bigger stuff. Ingrid didn't want to deal with it. She's not a bad person exactly. She's just someone who's spent 40 years believing appearances are the same thing as reality, and a husband with dementia doesn't fit the picture she'd built. I was the one who actually sat with him, learned his routines, figured out which mornings were good and which ones weren't. And somewhere in there, without really meaning to, I became the person he trusted most. Which is exactly why 18 months ago Walter had his lawyer draw up paperwork naming me not Nate, not Ingrid as his healthcare proxy and limited financial power of attorney. His reasoning, in his own words, "You're the only one in this family who actually listens when I talk." Ingrid did not take that well. Neither did Nate's sister, Priyanka. No, wait. I'm going to stop myself right there because I promised I'd tell this straight. Nate's sister is named Junko. She and Nate's mom get along about as well as two cats in a bathtub. But on this one thing, they were completely aligned. They thought Walter's paperwork was a mistake, and they thought I'd somehow talked him into it. I hadn't. I'd told him more than once that maybe Nate should be the one holding that responsibility instead of me. Walter just shook his head and said, "Nate loves me. You pay attention to me." Those aren't the same thing. He wasn't wrong. So that's where things stood for over a year. Tense, a little cold at family dinners, but manageable. Until 6 weeks ago, when Ingrid filed a petition to have Walter's power of attorney reassigned to her on the grounds that his current arrangement, and I'm quoting the actual filing here, may have been the result of undue influence by a family member with financial motive. That family member was me. The hearing got set for 3 weeks out. And that's exactly when I started noticing things weren't sitting right in that house. Stick with me here because the part where I actually found the cameras is coming up fast, and once I tell you what was on them, you are not going to believe what this family was actually hiding. It started small. I was staying over one weekend watching Walter so Nate and Ingrid could handle some estate paperwork downtown. I do a full smart home audit as part of my actual job habit. Not paranoia, I promise. And something in Walter's Wi-Fi traffic caught my eye. A device pulling data at 3 in the morning every single night, uploading to an external server I didn't recognize. I told myself it was probably a smart thermostat doing a firmware update. I almost let it go. But I didn't let it go. I'm not built that way. Next morning, I did a physical sweep of the house, the kind of sweep I run for clients paying me 4 figures an hour. Found the first one behind the kitchen smoke detector, angled straight at the counter where Walter and I sat most mornings going over his medication schedule and more than once his finances. Found a second one tucked into a decorative clock in the hallway outside his study. A third disguised inside a charging dock on the bookshelf pointed at his desk. 3 cameras, all uploading somewhere that wasn't the Kessler family's home security account. My hands were shaking a little, and not from fear, from something colder than fear. Somebody had been watching every single interaction I had with this man for who knows how long, and given the timing, given the petition sitting on a judge's desk 3 weeks out, I had a pretty good guess why. I didn't say anything that day. I went home and I did what I actually know how to do. I traced it. It took me 4 days to fully map where that footage was going. 4 days of not sleeping right, of sitting across from Nate at dinner and not telling him what I'd found in his own childhood home because I needed to be 100% sure before I said a word to anybody. Here's the part I need you to sit with for a second. I've spent my whole career on the other side of this exact situation, hired by people who think somebody's spying on them. And half the time it turns out they're wrong. It's nothing. It's a router glitch. I really wanted this to be nothing. I wasn't ready for what I actually found. The upload account traced back to a private security firm out of Stamford. Standard enough, rich families hire firms like that all the time, nothing damning on its own. But buried in the account metadata was the billing contact. Ingrid Kessler's personal email. Not the family's, not Walter's. Hers specifically set up 9 days before she filed the petition. She hadn't installed cameras to protect Walter. She'd installed them to build a case against me. I need you to really understand what that meant. Every recording my hands helping him with his pills, my voice going over his bank statements, with him on the days he got confused about numbers, private moments that belonged to a sick man, and the person who actually showed up for him, all of it had been sitting on a server waiting to be cherry-picked into whatever story would win a courtroom. I confronted her. Went over on a Tuesday, sat her down in her own kitchen, told her exactly what I'd found. She didn't even flinch. I did what any concerned mother would do, she said. You've clearly been managing his finances in ways that benefit you. I have every right to make sure my husband is protected. You have cameras recording him at 3 in the morning, Ingrid. That's not protection. That's surveillance. She actually smiled at that. We just wanted to keep everyone safe. Is that really so hard to believe? I left before I said something I couldn't take back. But driving home, something started nagging at me, a detail I'd glossed over in the footage metadata. Timestamps that didn't match up with what I'd actually witnessed in that house. If you've ever had a family member decide their version of events matters more than the truth, if you've ever watched somebody build a story about you out of half facts because the real story was inconvenient for them, I need you to know, I get it all the way down. Keep going with me, because what I found in those files 3 days before the hearing is the part that actually changes everything. Here's what I want you to understand about digital forensics. People who set up surveillance to catch someone else almost never think about what it'll catch them doing too. I went back through everything, not the clips Ingrid had already flagged and forwarded to her lawyer, the raw footage. All of it. Days of it at 2 in the morning with coffee I didn't finish because once I started, I couldn't stop. There was a pattern. Every time Walter had what I'd call a clear day sharp present asking real questions about his portfolio, Ingrid wasn't in those recordings much at all. But on his foggy days, the days he got confused about which grandkid was which, she showed up constantly. And in 3 separate clips spread out over the last 2 months, I watched her sit down next to him with a manila folder and a pen in a soft voice saying some version of, "Just sign here, honey, it's nothing complicated." He signed, on his worst days, 3 separate times. I didn't know yet exactly what those documents were, but I knew enough to understand this wasn't about protecting Walter from me. This was about someone using his bad days as a window and using her own hidden cameras meant to frame me as the proof. 2 nights before the hearing, I sat outside my own house in my car for 11 minutes before I went in. Wasn't nervous exactly, making sure I had it all lined up right, because I only got 1 shot to present this the way it needed to be presented. Harriet, my attorney, whose retainer I've never once regretted, subpoenaed the actual documents Ingrid had Walter sign. Turned out to be amendments to his trust. Small percentage shifts technical language easy for someone without a law degree to skim past. But once you added them up across all 3, it moved a controlling share of his estate management out of the existing structure and into a new one, where Ingrid held sole discretion, no oversight, and notably no requirement to account for how funds were spent. She hadn't just been trying to remove me. She'd been quietly restructuring her husband's estate around his worst days for 2 months straight, and she needed me gone before anyone looked closely enough to notice. The morning of the hearing, I didn't say a word to Nate about what I'd found. Not because I didn't trust him, because I needed him to hear it in that room at the same time as everyone else, so nobody could accuse me of coaching him. Courtroom, small county building, nothing dramatic about the room itself. Ingrid's attorney went first, walked through her petition concerns about undue influence, concerns about my access to his finances, a carefully worded implication that I'd manipulated a vulnerable man for personal gain. I watched Walter during all of it, confused, a little lost, but present enough to look genuinely hurt. When it was our turn, Harriet didn't argue. She just asked to submit exhibits. I played the footage myself. No speech beforehand, no setup. Just hit play and let the room watch Ingrid folder in hand 3 separate times, guiding her husband's hand through a signature on his worst days. Silence in that courtroom. Actual physical silence. Ingrid's face went from composed to something else entirely, the kind of look you get when you realize the thing you built to protect yourself just became the thing that convicts you. I stood up, slid the folder of trust amendments across the table toward her the same way she'd once slid a folder toward Walter, with a soft voice, telling him it was nothing complicated. "We just wanted to keep everyone safe too," I said. Her lawyer asked for a recess. The judge didn't grant it. I want to pause here for a second because I know some of you have had a family member rewrite the story of who you are to protect their own version of themselves, turned you into the villain, because the truth made them uncomfortable. If you've lived any version of that, drop a comment, tell me you're still here, because this next part is exactly for you. The judge didn't just deny Ingrid's petition. She referred the trust amendments to the state's Elder Affairs Office for review and ordered an independent financial audit of everything Ingrid had touched in the last 6 months. My power of attorney stayed exactly where Walter had put it 18 months earlier. Walter didn't fully understand everything that happened in that courtroom. But afterward, in the hallway, he grabbed my hand the way he does on his clearer days and said, "You didn't have to do all that." I told him I did. He just nodded like some part of him already knew. Here's the piece nobody in that courtroom found out until almost a week later, and honestly, it's the part that still gets to me the most. The housekeeper who'd worked for the Kesslers for 11 years, a quiet woman named Marisol, who I'd always liked but never really talked to outside pleasantries, sent an anonymous tip to Harriet's office 2 days before the hearing, flagging the exact dates Ingrid had brought paperwork for Walter to sign. Marisol had noticed the pattern months before I ever traced a single upload. She just hadn't known who to tell, or whether anyone would believe her over a woman like Ingrid Kessler. She'd been quietly documenting dates in her own personal notebook the whole time, waiting for someone worth trusting with it. Ingrid's petition got denied. The audit's still ongoing. Nate hasn't fully processed that his mother did what she did. He still calls her most Sundays. And honestly, I don't try to stop him. That's his relationship to sort out, not mine. I still check the home security feeds every morning now. Not because I'm scared anymore. Because now, for the first time, they're actually mine, installed the right way with Walter's full knowledge, nothing hidden behind a smoke detector. If there's one thing I actually learned from all this, it's that people who build a case against you usually leave a trail proving what they actually did instead. You just have to be patient enough and skilled enough to go looking. If any part of this hit close, if you've ever had someone twist your care for a person into a weapon against you, I see you genuinely. And if you liked watching somebody get completely underestimated and then quietly flip the whole table on the people who counted her out, watch my latest video. You will not see the ending coming.